Should I wear a cap?
Hey there, you are listening to the DMZ America Podcast for Wednesday, June 12th, 2024. Coming to you from the left, I am slightly giggly cartoonist Ted.
Giggly cartoonist from the right, Scott Stantis. I was asking Ted his fashion advice where, just
Always a good idea, because look at a man who always knows how to pick the right t-shirt.
You do. You always look resplendent.
These t-shirts are more expensive than they look. I'm a merino wool slut. And these shirts, merino wool t-shirts and other garb, but in particular t-shirts, they're odor resistant and wicking and and the point is you can wear them over and over and over. So they're amazing for travel. Like if you were going, away for a month, you just need seriously 5, and then you're good. You can wear them over. They don't get smelly and gross like cotton. But they're expensive as hell. There are workarounds, but basically,
what may I ask what expensive means in
$80 for a t-shirt?
Oh my God. I get my t-shirts for free.
Biden inflation. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. You can get a t-shirt for $9, but not one that's like this. And so you end up, once you go this route, you end up you're just I just want 5 of these and nothing else. It's kind of like the way it works. And okay. I mean, there's even one of the companies that does it even has a challenge where they ask guys to wear the same one for 100 days in a row. And people,
God.
And then they get free shirts if they do. I don't know how they verify whether they did or not, but you could just put it on every day, take a photo, and then, but
I guess, but
seems dumb. Seems like,
yeah, and you're a guy, of course you're going to wear the same t-shirt for 100 days. That's awesome. Someone told me to do this. Yes,
totally. That's right. I'll sleep in it, garden in it. I'll buy a garden just to be able to garden in it.
Okay, on the t-shirt issue, this is something that actually does get under my skin. When did t-shirts become this super thin, silky bullshit material? When did this happen?
Well, Scott, you're behind because the current trend in t-shirts now is super thick. Very, very thick. Like the material is insanely thick.
Oh, I haven't seen that. All I see is every time
I'll send you links because I'm a t-shirt whore and I know all about t-shirts. I personally hate them. I prefer a really, really light weave because I'm really sweaty, and if it's over 60, I'm hot. So, but no, I will. There's a lot to be said for a thick t-shirt, but for me, it has to be cold. It has to be 50 or 55.
Okay. So the other thing is that they also have made the sizes. Before, a t-shirt was like a hangy thing. It wasn't it was just a comfortable piece of material. They're really tight and they're really thin. So it's okay, I've got this 65-year-old carcass that no one deserves to see. Right. No one has done anything that wrong. No one has ever been that wrong in their life that they deserve to see this in some kind of tight, silky material.
That's a fair point. No, and it's true that the really thin t-shirts like that, I only wear during at night, for sleeping mainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there it is. Okay. Well, now we've tackled that one. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed we have. All right. So let's move on here. We don't have
issue number 1.
This is one of those short DMZ America podcasts. So for those of you who believe that less Scott and Ted is more, this is for you. So, next week, Joe Biden is traveling to Rome for the G7 summit. By the way, just parenthetically, it used to be the G8 before they kicked out.
What happened?
Was it Russia? But this was before the war. They just kicked out Russia just because they didn't like them for some reason, and I don't remember why. I mean, it was over.
Well, maybe all the invading, but go on.
Seems really dumb though, because it's one of the main points of something like the G8 is to have dialogue with countries like Russia that we don't.
I have no trouble talking to people, especially. I mean, I can talk to friends. I love talking to Ted, but talking to some other people who I don't like. Who, if you talk to them, you can work things out.
Usually, yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, look, what's true is you certainly cannot work anything out with anyone, even with your friend, if you don't talk to them. So, to quote Churchill, better, not one of his better quotes, but better to jaw than to war.
Yep.
No, totally. totally agree with that. But anyway, so he's off to Rome. It seems like it's very strange because he was just wasn't he just in France with the same dude? Anyway, whatever.
But Normandy, that's different.
Yeah, France, Italy, whatever.
And did you see him freeze on that trip? Oh my God, Ted.
Now, see, that's the real freeze. Republicans are drawing attention to when he was kind of like this during the Juneteenth, the pre-Juneteenth celebration, where he's like looking at music. And I'm like, people were like, oh, he's not swaying to the music. I'm like, neither do I. It's like, I would just be staring at the music. If I found the music engrossing, I'd be like, I would be just like Biden. I'd be this like. So I get that. Yeah. Now, but in Normandy, he really did freeze up. He didn't seem, on several occasions, he did not seem to know who he was or what he was doing. And that is true. But anyway, Biden's off to meet with his Canadian counterpart. And a think tank within the government of Canada, known as Policy Horizons Canada, they do things differently up north, said that they are preparing for various scenarios, threats to Canadian national security. And they have a problem, a danger of unsettlement on their southern border. That's right, us. They say they're worried about U.S. ideological divisions, democratic erosion, and domestic unrest escalate, plunging the country into, wait for it, civil war. First of all, I just want to say, Canada, fuck you. United States, when we had a civil war before, there was like no damage, no muss, no fuss, nothing much came of it, no harm, no foul. Get off our backs, right?
You did just fine.
Okay, maybe not so much. But yeah,
no, Canada was unscathed. Nothing happened.
True, but I was joking about there being no damage. Look,
down south there was.
So like there's some possibility that Trudeau will talk about this with Biden. Not that Biden would probably be able to prevent a civil war. I gotta say, so this has been something that's been floated for a while. There's a show called Civil War, which I haven't seen. I don't really have a sense of whether it's any good or not. But basically, the scenario has been floated that the divisions over Trump and in particular are leading to some serious the divisions that could lead to like a military schism. And I guess the question here is, do you think that could happen? And if it did, could it look anything like an 1860 style succession, or would it look somewhat different? Or, I mean, I can see unrest, but the unrest I would see, let's say from a disputed election, let's say, would seem like more like lone wolves carrying out like acts of domestic terrorism, like mass shootings, assassinations, not really like militia against militia, state against state. I don't see that because I don't think that we're set up for that now.
Well, we're not set up for it. We're highly disorganized as a people. That's part of our charm, is that the chaos, the creative chaos,
and we're decentralized
that we have in the United States, and we're decentralized. So, are you going to have a CSA against the USA kind of thing? I don't see it. First of all, because Ted, there's so many different thoughts out there and different camps and different people that I see this. Did you see Man in the High Castle and the White Castle?
Yes.
That was, I mean, it's an alternative history. Nazi, the Axis wins the war, and they're divvying up the United States. And how's the fighting in the United States? Some people say, okay, that we all hail our new overlords. Some people fight it. There's the Black Communist Party that is apparently pretty dynamic and using violence effectively to wage this resistance. I think you're going to see, if that were to happen, and you and I both know history well enough to know that civil wars there seems to be an obvious buildup to them after they happen. Right. Does that make sense? You look back and it's sort of like, that's when it started. That's when we should have prevented it. I see.
Like in 1860, I think as soon as the southern states announced that they were not putting Lincoln on any ballot, that was a harbinger of future trouble.
Well, and just the fact that they'd already said that, they'd had some of the states, South Carolina being chief among them, had already voted for secession. the secession movement, the secession people supporting it was growing by leaps and bounds. Yeah, you could have seen that coming. I mean, Buchanan, could he have stopped the war? That's one of the great historical questions we have. He's always rated as one of the top 2 or 3 worst presidents we've ever had. I think Donald Trump would welcome a war and a breakup of why would he want to keep, those hairy-brained liberals up there? The problem with it is, Ted,
the liberals have all the states that make money, though.
Well, there's that, but you also have in this American Civil War of the 1860s, it was slavery. You don't have that hard set of an issue. You didn't have slavery in Michigan. You didn't have slavery in Wisconsin. You didn't have slavery in Illinois or Indiana. So those states fought against it, but you do have MAGA people in all those states, as well as progressives in all those states.
Yeah, that's the real problem. Yeah, there were very few, like Ohio is a hotbed of abolitionism, but it did not have, I mean, you would be probably hard pressed to find that many Ohioans who were militantly pro-slavery. They probably didn't, some of them didn't care.
They had copperheads.
White Ohioans here, yeah.
Right, but they had the copperheads, the guys who were Northerners who supported slavery and thought that it's just Jim Dandy, of course, if you're not the slave.
But there was also the sort of like my favorite, getting back to political ephemera that we both collect. I just acquired, as I showed you the other day, the Stephen Douglas token that says MYOB on the other side. Mind your own business. Like, Southerners going to enslave. What you going to do?
Yeah. So, slavers going to slave. What what are you going to do? As far as the Civil War in the United States, I've never seen, in my 65 years in this country, I've never seen a split this profound, including, and granted, I was a young person. I was only 10, 11, 12, 13 years old during the anti-war movements. But I don't know that I felt this sense of fracture in this country. I mean,
I'm just MAGA people younger than you, and I agree with that. I'm 60. And I mean, I think what I remember, look, the Nixon-McGovern election was these were 2 candidates who really were very different, and their partisans were very different. And there was a lot of hostility between both. That said, I don't think many partisans of either one thought that the other side was inhuman, satanic, evil. They just thought maybe they were just dumb and wrong. Now they definitely think, I mean, Democrats and Republicans do not know how to talk to each other. And basically they will vote. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you'll hear Republicans say, Trump people saying like, Joe Biden is the embodiment of pure evil. I mean, he's not sharp enough to be the embodiment of pure evil. Or with Democrats who are like, Donald Trump is going to be, it'll be the last election we ever have. It's like look, Biden's done some evil things, and Trump has done has some authoritarian tendencies, as we've talked about. But I mean, the exaggeration, the demonization of the partisans of the other side. It's one thing to be like, I personally hated Ronald Reagan, but I didn't think people who voted for Ronald Reagan were evil. And there's a difference. And I didn't hate people who voted for Ronald Reagan. And I think that was same thing. I think people who were against Bill Clinton, really, I remember they just didn't understand why Democrats supported Bill Clinton, because they thought, what a sleaze. They weren't wrong. But they didn't think people who voted for Bill Clinton were evil. That's changed.
Yes. And that's a significant attitudinal shift that I don't know we've ever seen. Now,
by the way, parenthetically, now polls show that most Democrats and Republicans would not approve of their child marrying a member of the other party.
I would say that does not surprise me in the least.
That's new though.
Yeah, I think it is. And that tells you how deep this fracture is. Now let's go back to 1860 and look at the fracture in the United States. You had people who, like I said, in the North, who supported slavery, said that, mind your own business, like the Northern Democrat slogan, which I did not know until you got that piece of campaign material. And down South, don't forget, there are a lot of Southerners who were against slavery.
True.
It was a sizable number. It wasn't enough to be, affect the outcomes of their of either policy. My point is, if there's to be a civil war, how does that work? I think it becomes a civil war closer to India than it does here. And that is, all of a sudden, yeah, you know what? Guess what? All of the Muslims are going to live together and all of the Hindus are going to live together. But there's Hindus and Muslims living together. Yeah, it sucks to be them. One of them is going to have to move along. And that's what it looks like here. That's what it will look like here. Whether, I don't know what that looks like. So I always wonder, is it apocryphal? I mean, we haven't even addressed that. Is this just being apocryphal? Is this just being melodramatic and there's no way that that's going to happen here? Let me walk.
What is the what? What's going to happen here? I mean,
a civil war of some kinds.
I guess the question is, look, I do think that we're politically fragmented. The question is, does that result in a civil war? And if so, what does the civil war look like? I don't see a state, for example, or a part. Let's put it this way. A civil war, to me, is there any way that can happen without a partition of the country? I mean, or at least a de facto partition of the country. I don't really think so, right? I mean, for example, in Ukraine prior to 2022, you had a civil conflict that began in 2014 after the Maidan uprising in Kiev, right? At that point, the Eastern Russian-dominated parts of the country, they declared independence, right? They formed the so-called People's Republics, Donetsk and Luhansk. And then eventually, and they were still part of Ukraine, but then they declared, but we're autonomous, but within Ukraine, analogous to Kurdistan within Iraq, which is de facto an independent state with its own stamps and currency and flag and everything. But it's still not recognized internationally as a nation. Donetsk and Luhansk, in a disputed plebiscite, voted to join Russia. The West doesn't acknowledge it as legitimate, but Russia obviously does. I could see. Do you see something like? Is that the only way you can have a civil conflict, or can you have a civil conflict that feels more like, like North and South Vietnam? They were technically North versus South, but as we saw during the Tet Offensive, the so-called Northern, like Viet Cong, they were right in Saigon, right? I mean, they were everywhere. They were like, palm olive, you're soaking in it. Could it be like that? And I guess the thing is it necessarily just armed conflict? Or, I just have a hard time figuring out for me, it's the practical side of this. Who shoots who? How does it look? How's the organization? Are there militias? What state is most likely to secede from the Union at this point?
I'd say Texas. I'd say Florida. I
can see that.
I guess, yeah, I'd say, and there's been secession movements, obviously the Southern one being the most dramatic, but there have been, for instance, the New England states were looking to secede. Midwestern states looked to secede. Western part of the United States.
That was the Aaron Burr thing, right? The New England thing. But that was early on.
Ohio was going to secede from the
Yes. In fact, one of the notorious traders was one of the founders of the city of Dayton, and the street is still named after him in Dayton. They didn't care that he was a guy who was so treasonous that he betrayed Aaron Burr. But
who was it?
John Wilkinson. He was a true, interesting person. Let's just say that. I was going to say son of a bitch, but then there's Anyway, it's bizarre. So California has often flirted with succession.
Oh yeah, because don't forget, California is California is like the 11th or 10th biggest economy on the planet.
Depending on how you count. Yeah, it's a big place. Florida's Texas, of course, has it famously in their joining the union, that they have the right to get out anytime they want. They have a prenup.
They can also in their constitution break into 4 different states.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's it. Are there discrete borders to those states, like defined?
I think there are. Yeah, I think there are, but I'm not sure where they are. But yeah, they can have 4 different countries. I mean, 4 different states.
They've got all the options, man. We really wanted to marry them. We were like, whatever, we'll just sign. Okay, fine, whatever.
We just wanted them so bad. James K. Polk wanted them bad.
Yeah, he wanted them bad. And then you've got like, so yeah, and I mean, New York has often talked about like, fuck you, we pay more money into the IRS than we get back, so more than any other state. Like, we should leave, but none of that ever goes anywhere. I mean, I just can't imagine the rage. I mean, maybe during a COVID type crisis, like you could have seen, like Florida was kind of like, fuck you, we're doing it right, and the rest of you are fucking up. We're down here, we're like sipping margaritas and drinking sangria, hanging out on the beach, eating Haitian food, and no masks for us, and we're all good. Fuck you. Although that wasn't really true, because they had a really high COVID transmission rate, but we don't talk about that.
Well, they have that, and they also had a very high senior citizen mortality rate.
Yes, they did. So, it makes more room for future retirees, I suppose.
I suppose.
But yeah, so I mean, what do you think is going to happen if Biden wins? Will the Trumpies accept those results? I mean, they did last time pretty much after January 6th. Do you think it would be something like that, another spasm?
Yeah, I think we're going to have another January type 6, maybe a bigger one.
But not in the same place, because obviously the federal government will expect that.
Sure. Let's give them credit. Where it's really not due. Yeah, my guess would be Biden wins legitimately, but by a sliver.
Yeah,
they're going to go back to we were robbed again.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have it could
conversely, what if Trump wins? Will there be, beyond weeping and gnashing of teeth, will there be action?
The brie will weep as the Chardonnay warms to room temperature. Nah, fuck, come on, seriously? No.
They'll just whinge on MSNBC.
Yeah, I mean, so look at the Palestinian protests, man. I mean, they've already run out of steam. I mean, these people. I'm sorry, that side of
there were no protests whatsoever for abortion. That shocked me.
No, remember they were going to have
the women to go crazy, cities to burn.
Yeah,
nothing happened.
Nothing happened. So no, if Trump wins, everything's quiet, and we just slowly slide into totalitarianism. So we need to.
All right, we will leave that there, and when we come back, we will be coming back
and talk about something very sad.
That's what as opposed to civil war.
Americans.
Hey everyone, welcome back. You are listening to the DMZ America Podcast for Wednesday, the 12th of June, the year of our Lord 2024, coming to you from the American left, or what's left of it. I am Ted Rall, editorial cartoonist.
And coming from the marching into the future right, I'm Scott Stantis. God, that sounded so fascist.
What a surprise.
I have to admit that going out of the last segment, I'm still laughing about because it's going to be a sad issue we're about to talk about. And he said, as opposed to civil war, which, I mean, there can be laughs there. Let's be clear.
I suppose. I mean, who doesn't remember that great time that? I don't know. Doesn't seem like that.
Well, there was a great joke at My American Cousin just before, John Wilkes Booth, kapoom. But it was a joke. That's what John Wilkes Booth was waiting for, the joke, for the laugh from the joke to cover his entrance into the box and his shooting the president.
Right. All right. Well, what is it? Sic semper tyrannis? Yeah. All right. Yep. So Let's do this. All right. So a new poll from CBS News YouGov finds that 62% of registered voters would be okay with deporting all illegal immigrants.
Oh, that's not what we're going to do.
Bob?
We're going to do senior homeless. I don't care. I mean, why would I care about deporting people?
I thought we talked about this already. No, that's
No, I thought we were going to talk about the seniors. Okay, the senior homeless.
Well, we can talk about that too. I mean, I don't care, whatever.
No, let's go. No, keep it going. I'll shut up.
Okay, no, we'll make this. Okay, let me get your reaction on this very quickly, and then we'll move over to the thing that I guess I agreed to talk about, and then I lied to you, and then all right. So anyway, 62% of Americans are okay with deporting everyone. Trump has promised to build camps and to deport all 11 million illegal immigrants. Basically, one CBS host was shocked that number was so high because obviously it includes a sizable number of Democrats. Republicans do not amount to over 50% of the country. So, what do you make of that? I mean, I think it is a little shocking just how mainstream nativism has become in this country. I mean, mass deportations would be, I mean, I guess it's one thing to say, I want them all deported. It's another thing to actually watch them all being deported.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not seeing it yet. Then it's going to be incredibly ugly and incredibly horrible to watch. 7 million people minimum.
Yeah.
I think the number is probably closer to 10 to 11 million people being dragged onto buses.
Yeah.
And shipped back. Now, first,
everyone's going to see it. Everyone's going to know someone. Everyone's going to see it.
Yeah, and it's going to be a catastrophe for the economy.
True.
But if you live in, say, this one of the border states, particularly Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, California, immigration's a problem because it overwhelms communities. And I can tell you from experience living in Southern California for years that it was an enormous number of people, and it not just the language, which is annoying, not, walking into a store, they don't speak English, which is annoying, but the stresses it puts on the social, the social fabric of the community. Yes. I mean, to say, I love it when I hear people, my friends on the left, say it doesn't cost anything because they can't register for anything. I go, no, but they go to the ER because they break an arm. They do go to food banks so that they can eat. I mean, all of this stuff is stuff, you and I would do if we were forced and went to another country looking for a better way of life. I like immigration. I'm for immigration. So I want to begin from that, but I can understand the frustrations. The 62% is really easy to understand because it's them, Ted. It ain't me.
Okay. I think that's so true and spot on. I'm not going to, we'll leave that be the last word there. Totally. All right. Now let's talk about this other story. Many people over the age of 50, that would include, most importantly, you and I,
most important
that because of surging home prices and the failure of the overall safety net, that a lot of people over 60, over 50 are going to die homeless, and that there's no structure in place to really deal with that. And that basically, as demographically, we have a lot of old, poor baby boomers with and that's a massive demographic, and a pretty big, although neglected and ignored their entire lives, Generation X coming up right afterwards, that our society is not prepared for this. We've had a steadily declining birth rate. Yep. The newer, younger generations, already burdened with massive student loans and debt, are going to find themselves dealing with or not dealing with this huge social problem. And we might be going back to the 1970s when we were kids and there were stories about old people, eating cat food and stuff because they couldn't afford regular food. I mean, history is very cyclical in this country, as in most countries. So
if I could jump in real quick to your point, that don't forget, and this is coming from a conservative, Social Security, before Social Security, I think the number was somewhere in the neighborhood of 70% or nearly 70% of all seniors in the United States were under the poverty line.
And that, yeah, and what's funny is when I wrote my Gen X manifesto, Revenge of the Latchkey Kids, in the mid-90s, people, I checked that, and those numbers had completely reversed. People over 65 at that time had not only the most wealth, they had the highest incomes. Now think about that. That includes a lot of people, a lot of people were earning more in retirement than younger people were earning working. So it was a dramatic reversal of fortune. And now we appear to be headed back the pendulum is swinging back the other way.
So where does the homeless come from? You're wondering, are these people being evicted from their homes? Yes. In large part because especially if they're in urban areas like Ted lives in, where they have to rent, the rents are going through, they're unabated, unrestrained, are going through the roof. Couple that with homes in, let's say, Chicago, because that's where I'm, one of the places I lived and still work for the Chicago Tribune. The taxes, property taxes in Chicago are onerous anyway. They're getting worse. But now with this boom in housing costs, it's insane to look at how much housing costs now. You were living in a humble home in Pilsen. That's a working class neighborhood, mostly Latino now. And the houses on average were going for, well, let's say between 180 and 250. Something someone who worked for a living could actually afford. Those houses now are $500,000 homes, and they're being taxed as $500,000 homes. The same is true across the country. Well, Proposition 13 passed overwhelmingly in California for a reason, because the property taxes were so onerous, old people were being kicked out of their homes because they couldn't afford the taxes. We've got to start addressing those types of issues. Also, we have to start addressing home subsidies. We have to start looking seriously at what the problem is. I mean, listen, you and I are old. We're going to get older, I hope. And we're going to be faced with these very issues. And as we tiptoe closer and closer to retirement, with inflation, what we have saved up in the bank ain't what it used to be. All of those issues we're going back to, as Ted mentioned, the 70s, when you had people eating Alpo, and back to the 30s, when in the 20s and 30s, where you had old people, almost all of them living under the poverty line. That is the not number one, but certainly is in the top tier of issues that really define if a culture is truly good or bad. And that's how it treats senior citizens. And we're going back to, we suck because we don't care. It goes back to 62% of people think packing up a group of human beings and shipping them back to wherever the hell they came from is A-OK.
1 million of whom, by the way, are married to American citizens.
Now, aren't they American citizens by virtue of the marriage?
They can become American citizens in many, if not most cases, but these million are not yet American citizens.
So, that we talked about a civil war in the first segment of this podcast. We're heading towards waters, and no one's addressing this stuff in any serious way. No one is addressing the drop in the birth rate in this country in any serious way. Of all countries that you think they'd be serious, and that's Japan. The average age now is what, Ted, 68? Their aging population and the ratio of young to old, well, someone has to pay. Social Security is essentially a Ponzi scheme. You just keep, the next generation pays for this generation, and so on and so on. That's part of our social contract in the United States. Well, when you have, 10 old people and 1 young person, that math doesn't add up. And that's why I love think tanks, although many of the think tanks in the United States have shifted away from, this is another plays into the theme of our podcast this week, have shifted away from policy and towards advocacy of certain political, particularly political candidates. There are answers to these questions if we're willing to look at them in a serious way and address them in a serious manner. We're not.
Yeah, well, I guess the question, what is the argument you're making is that it's bad. Okay, why is it bad? I mean, what's the difference between that, and like when I wrote Revenge of the Latchkey Kids, when I argued that it was crazy to have a gerontocracy where young people were suffering terribly, but old people were living large. How is that better?
Well, I don't see the young people living large. I see them living, and I see the old people just, being homeless and living in cardboard boxes, or trying to cobble together some multi-generational, housing solution, which isn't available because, their kids are shackled, as you mentioned, with enormous debt. How is that different? It isn't. It just flipped the story. That's all that's going on. And now there's people who are, are really in the crosshairs of misfortune. And, and you joked, it's you and I, but I think we're going to be okay. You're survived the revolution there in New York. I won't make it here, but that's okay. I'll be a martyr for the cause. Anyway, so what happens? I mean, where do we go from here? You and I talk about, how many commentators don't talk about solutions, and there are solutions. I mean, we could enumerate them now. We could just say, Social Security is sacrosanct and will have to be paid for in perpetuity, regardless of what happens. And that means, oh my gosh, we might have to cut 5 Aegis destroyers from the defense budget. Gasp, a conservative talking about cutting the defense budget. Well, the defense budget's stupid. Quite frankly, we're building these massive defense systems that have no application to the world we're entering. That's just one of the areas where we can have a serious, constructive discussion. But no one's having that discussion now, Ted. Nobody, because it's not that interesting an issue. They don't care. We don't care. That's what the 62% of people about the deportation. We don't care about each other. I don't. I would venture. I will pay you 1 month of my salary if you can prove to me that a majority of what is it now, Gen Z or whatever the fuck they are?
Gen Z are the under 20 crowd, under 20.
Do not care what happens to me or you or people in our age group. Period.
I don't know about that. I think I would certainly agree with you if you were talking about millennials. They really don't care. Gen Z remains to be seen. I feel like they're a better generation.
Millennials are, okay. Well, but you see where I'm going with this. They don't care-ism in America, which is becoming prevalent.
It's not just generational. It's a serious problem. I mean, look, when I wrote Latchkey, it was the old people who didn't care about, Douglas Copeland, when he wrote Generation X, the book that the generation is named after, he said that, he made fun of old baby boomers who had stickers on their back of their expensive cars that said, "I'm spending my kids' inheritance." And he was like, they literally are. And so, it could go both ways. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
If I can find out. There we go. And welcome to the third and final and most scrumptious and delicious segment of the DMZ America podcast. I'm Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
And I'm Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
All right. So it's no laughing matter. We have to talk about something that's happened to a colleague of ours. Her name is Atina Farghadani. She's a cartoonist in Iran, and she has just been sentenced to 6 years in prison. According to her attorney, Atina has been in prison since she was arrested 2 months ago on April 13th, where she was charged with insulting sacred values and propagating against the ruling system. She got 5 years for the former, 1 year for the latter, if you're paying attention for such things. The lawyer called this proceeding a sham trial. What happened was that there was an art exhibit that was that she had been denied the right to attend. So in protest, she kind of pulled a Ted Rall in the 90s kind of thing, or 80s, and she tried to post her cartoon up on the wall outside Ayatollah Khamenei's house. So she was arrested by security personnel who beat her, abused her, took her to a notorious prison called Evan Prison. She was apparently tortured in a Revolutionary Guard safe house, according to her attorney. Various groups around the country, around the world, including Cartoonists Rights Network, which you and I are familiar with here in New York, here in the United States, Pan America Cartooning for Peace, which is based in France, which I do cartoons for sometimes, have all collectively decried her arrest and are urging her immediate release. That seems unlikely. We know that the Iranians have a habit, if in cases like this, of keeping the person for a while, like a year, to make sure they've really learned their lesson. And then if there's still a hubbub going on, deporting them to whichever Western country wants to have them. So hopefully that's what will happen here. What would be worse is if she were to stay there for 6 years. You know, I mean, you had when I sent this story to you and you were like hilariously sardonic about it. It's like, well, at least they care about cartoons in other countries. And
sorry.
And, you know, I mean, you're right. I was thinking about like when Charlie Hebdo happened, and I think it was 14 cartoonists, our colleagues, who were slaughtered mercilessly by ISIS assholes at their desks in Paris for the crime of spreading India ink over Bristol board, you know, pattern that radical Islamists didn't approve of. They were, you know, that was 14 people. That was more than the number of staff cartoonists in the United States east of the Mississippi River at that time that died there. So it's kind of like, just to put this into perspective, all of the asshole editors and editorial pages at places like the New York Times that were pontificating about like how tragic this was. It's like, they didn't kill the cartoonists, they just deprived them of a living and don't hire them and have laid them all off. The New York Times literally got rid of all of their cartooning as a matter of policy. This was a policy that was enacted by an editor who has since been disgraced and fired by the New York Times, but the policy still remains. And it's like, you know, and the details behind that story are ridiculous. But it is interesting that obviously, at least the Iranian authorities are really afraid of this craft. They really think that it makes an impact. Are they paranoid and wrong? And should they just be like, take a cue from the New York Times? Like, don't worry about it. No one cares about political cartooning. And let her go. It's cool. She can draw whatever she wants. Just ignore her, marginalize her, just fire her.
Yeah.
Game. Or, you know, I know there's more editorial cartoonists on staff at newspapers in Tehran than there are in the entire United States at this point. So
is that true?
It is. Oh, for sure. True. Yeah. They have a vibrant press. They have a lot of cartoonists.
Wow.
Most other countries do. You know, I mean, obviously we want Atina to get out today. You know, it's like no one should be in prison for drawing art of any kind. But you know, I just wonder: are the Iranians paranoid, or are they?
No.
Or Americans kind of missing out on a cool art form?
Well, Americans are missing out on a cool art form, and obviously, we're going to say that. You and I are editorial cartoonists, so I mean, you know, but here's, I mean, I can tell you fact after fact after fact that'll just blow your brains. I mean, it's so mind numbing how stupid editors in this country have become. The cartoonist at USA Today put together galleries, did original work for them, put together galleries of cartoons and cartoon work, and they were by far, Ted, by far, this will not surprise you in the least, the most clicked on things in the paper. I mean, by a factor of 100. I'm not exaggerating. They fired them and they got rid of the galleries. Why? Because they're morons, because they saw no value in them, because editors have never seen value in what we do. Editorial cartooning has always been a threat to them because they can't do it, first and foremost. You know, they can do, you know, we all learned to read and write in the 3rd grade. They can do that, but they don't know how to draw a good editorial cartoon. I've actually challenged an editor who gave me crap about how easy your job is. I said, you know, first of all, fuck you. Second of all, try it. I can't draw. I go, okay, now do this. It can be stick figures. Come up with an idea a day. Just, you say it is so easy, give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
And within a day and a half, he said he couldn't do it.
Did he?
But he still thought it was an easy job. No, of course not. Why would you do that? And he continued to say it was an easy job. I'm like, fuck you. You can't do it. Editors in the United States it's a whole pack of, you talk about the, post-capitalist world, they're them. They were raised in a world that is, they didn't have to be creative. They didn't have to be smart. They didn't have to be quick on their feet and creative when being confronted with some kind of obstacle, because all they had to do is show up at the newspaper, turn on the presses, and it printed money until they couldn't. I mean, I've mentioned this before. I've mentioned this on your radio show. I don't know of any other business on the planet where the people who produced the product held the consumers of that product in such disdain.
Wait, I thought of it. There is one.
Okay.
Drug dealers.
Do they?
Yeah, drug dealers think that their customers are like deranged, addicted reprobates. They're
not wrong.
Well,
they're not wrong. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Drug dealers and editors have the same view of their clientele, the consumers of their product. I mean, and the arrogance of the editors had always been that they, we produce this product. Where else are they going to get it? Until they found a place they could get it. More importantly, they found out they could live without it.
Right.
And so getting back to editorial cartooning, in this day and age where we have the shortest attention spans in the history of our species since before we were amoebas, editorial cartoons would probably be the perfect, political attack that you could possibly have. A good cartoon. There are a bunch of shitty cartoonists out there and a bunch of shitty cartoons, but a good cartoon, holy crap. They can change. Don Wright, the great 2-time Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist from Miami, passed away recently, and I was interviewed for that. I said, Don Wright drew a cartoon that changed my mind on an issue. It was on the death penalty, and he had done a couple of them on the death penalty. And they were so powerful and the logic of them so overwhelming that it changed my view of that issue. I mean, that's powerful. That's a hell of a lot more than any fundraiser you could have at at Georgetown for an anti-gun control or anti-death penalty movement, and have, Sister, what's her name from Dead Man Walking, come and talk to your group. What we do has an explosive potential. The leadership of Iran sees it, they know it, and they shut it down. If you did that here in the United States, again, effectively, I don't know what the response would be. I think the response from readers and people who saw it would be overwhelming. The powers that be would yawn and say, that's nothing. And that's where we are.
Yeah, that's so sad. But
sorry, you touched a nerve, and
no, I do.
And like I said, I said sarcastically, at least they care about this stuff there. I mean, every other country on the planet, editorial cartoons are powerful. Editorial cartoonists come under, we have members of our editorial cartoonist community here in the United States that say, we're under threat. No, we're not. Where the fuck do they see you? You're not under threat, you moron. No one knows who you are or what you do. But they do in France. They do in Iran. They do. I imagine that the pressure now on the press in Russia doesn't allow for, anti-Putin cartoons. I would imagine anti-Western.
I would imagine.
Well, you were there fairly recently. You must have seen.
Yeah, that's true. And I didn't read any news. I picked up some newspapers actually, but they didn't have cartoons in them. So
really, okay. But American newspapers now more and more don't have cartoons in them, and that's because and Ted, you see this stuff. I sent this stuff to you. It's a full page of type.
Yeah.
I am one of them.
It looks like a paper from like 1832.
Yeah, which nobody would want to dive into. There is absolutely no reason for me to read this shit, because it's all, and the headlines are drivel and boring and stupid. I'm okay. I'm sorry. It just, it defies description. So yes, the power of editorial cartooning can be enormous. And this is just another example of it. I know you're not, plugged into the minutia of Iranian government functionaries, but if you were to look at this issue, would you say it would turn out the way you described earlier? Or she would spend a year in jail?
I think, yeah, I do. I think she'll be expelled after about a year to a year and a half. If the West pressers for her release, they will not. If she doesn't get offers from Western countries to take her, because basically the Iranians will say, we don't really want her around. We don't really need to kill her, but we want her gone. And she can draw as much anti-Iranian shit as she wants outside of Iran. And that's how that'll go. Yeah.
Okay. Well, send out the good mojo and say some of my Catholic voodoo that way.
All right. Well, with that, Scott, we should wrap it up. I know you have things to do. So where can everybody go to find you when they're not listening to the DMZ America podcast, which I don't know why.
Well,
but I mean,
Yeah, what kind of moron doesn't listen to this podcast?
No, like all the time, 24/7.
Yeah, if you listen to this podcast, you are that rarest of rare human beings in that you want to learn. You're in the top 1% of the smarty pants on this planet. Surveys that Ted and I have had in our head have shown this to be true.
That's true. I mean, these are facts that, if proven, would be true.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you for that support. Yeah, go ahead and look at go to gocomics.com/Scott Stantis or gocomics.com/Prickly City to see my political comic strip. You can go to Dallas News and go to the opinion section and see the work I do for the Dallas Morning News. You can go to the Chicago Tribune and see their opinion section, see where my work runs there. And you can hear it on Center Clip, this wonderful app that are effectively mini podcasts, 30 seconds, no longer than 5 minutes. I really like it. I just posted 2 of them. We have a topic of the day, but I also talked about the interest rates, not the interest rates, sorry, the inflation rate being 3.3%. And it's just wonderful to have that outlet, to be immediate and to get it out there. So Ted, where can we see things all Ted Rallian?
You can, first of all, don't forget to buy my book, 2024 Revisited. It is a graphic novel and it's out now. Go to Amazon.com. If you forget, you can go to Rall.com as well. Go to Rall.com to look for that and everything else. GoComics.com/Ted Rall. Go to Center Clip, of course, and the radio show, The Final Countdown.
Excellent show, by the way.
Wong. Scott Stantis is a frequent guest. And that is Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern Time on Radio Sputnik, X Spaces, Rumble, and probably elsewhere, maybe not. Anyway, you don't have to watch it live. You can stream it anytime. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Scott. Thanks, Ted. Do the things you need to go do, and we will talk soon.
Well, bye, everybody.
Bye.